Hey friends, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me should be linked in the description box just below this video. I'm most active over on Instagram where you'll find me as both Rainbow Ange and Yarn and Yarns. And if you haven't been here before, then here on the channel you'll generally find me chatting about my adventures in knitting and crochet and spinning. Every now and then I'll pop up a video about my life as a yarn shop owner. I own a really small bricks and mortar yarn shop where I live in South Wales, just outside of Cardiff here in the UK. So every now and then I pop up a little video about that. But this week it's all of the normal usual stuff, chatting about what I have been up to. I'm not recording on my usual day this week. I usually record on a Monday. We had a bank holiday weekend here in the UK and we had a few things planned with friends. Between that and struggling to catch up after my little breakaway, my little holiday, has just meant this week has been, or last week I should say, was a little bit of a car crash in terms of me being organised. I almost let things slide this week and didn't record at all, but then I thought, you know what, I can pop up a quick video about what I've been doing, otherwise I'll completely lose the plot and get out of the rhythm of what I've been up to. So yeah, apologies, this is going up a little bit later. Hopefully it will just help me keep in the routine of recording. This week I have all of the usual segments, knitting and spinning and crochet. I also, before we want to get started on that, want to briefly mention that with any luck, either when this video goes up or in the next day or two, I'm actually going to start a Ravelry group for this podcast and my shop. Just going to be like a combined group to kind of celebrate the community and around both of those things. But one of the main drivers for me starting a Ravelry group is I am going to be co-hosting a couple of knit-alongs. I will be hosting a knit-along coming up with my lovely friend Caroline, who is the host of the Colourful Creativity podcast. So details about that one will be coming soon. I'm also going to be hosting a knit-along with the lovely Ellie of Curio Yarns podcast. And both of those lovely ladies are also dyers and they have yarn companies of the same names as their YouTube channels. So yeah, I'm really excited to be hosting those. Cal with Ellie starts this coming Sunday. Ellie already has all of the details up in her Ravelry group and has spoken about it on her podcast. I'm not going to speak about it in detail here today, only because A, I want to try and get a video up fairly quickly, and B, I'm struggling a little bit again this week. I've got some back pain again this week, so I'm struggling to sit in the same position for too long. So I just want to show you what I've got in terms of progress on my projects this week, and I will chat much more about the cow next time. But if you want to find out details, then hopefully I'll have them up in the Ravelry group soon, and if not, you can hop on over to Ellie's podcast and Ravelry group to get all of the details. I think that's all the news to catch you up with. I'm going to jump right on in with my works in progress and all that good stuff. I'm going to start with spinning this week. I have one complete start to finish spin to show you, and this was some lovely merino fibre that I spun up for the winner of my giveaway a few videos ago, and I know that the recipient has received her skein of yarn now, so I'm going to insert the video that I took along the way just to show you through the process of spinning up that braid of fibre. The yarn that I've been spinning is now finished. You just saw a little video of the process from fibre to yarn, and here is the yarn in its finished glory. There are actually two little sort of skeins mixed up in here. I have to do it that way because the bobbins on my wheel just don't accommodate a full 100 gram plied braid. So this was the Wildcraft 100% merino fibre in the All the Roses colourway. I still have, let me just grab it, another braid of the fibre here. So this is what the fibre looked like before it was spun up, and here is the finished skein. So there's some fun sort of marling going on in here. I spun this as a traditional 3-ply, and I really like how this yarn has turned out. I've got about 12 wraps per inch, which is equivalent to a DK, and I think there's about 230 odd meters here. I haven't remeasured this since I washed and dried it, so I need to do that, but I'm going to send this off now to Julie, who won the giveaway for this, and I hope that she finds a nice project to use it in. The yarn is possibly a little bit too highly spun in places. There's a couple of bits like here, can you see, where it's kind of curling in on each other. I put quite a lot of twist into the singles and to the ply to make a nice high twist yarn, so it should be quite hard wearing even though it's a merino. But yeah, and I don't think that, as I say, it's not all through the yarn. There's just a couple of places where it's trying to curl back on itself, and I think once that it goes into a project, that will sort of even out even more. So yeah, I really do hope she likes the yarn. I'm really pleased with it. So I hope that you enjoyed that little insert. It was recorded over the course of a week or so, and I finished that up a couple of weeks ago now. So I have a new spin on my wheel. For those of you who maybe don't know or haven't joined before, I have a vintage spinning wheel. It's a Haldane Shetland. The wheel isn't in production anymore, and I think they stopped making them back in the 1980s sometime. But it's a lovely little wheel. It's got its limitations, but I really am enjoying my spinning wheel spinning at the moment, and I'm really hoping soon to raise some money so that I can get a newer wheel, which will hopefully allow me to do a few more things. The project that I'm working on at the moment uses some beautiful fibre from Ashford. And those of you who maybe know about Ashford, they also make spinning wheels. They're quite famous for their wheels, but they make fibre and all sorts of other sort of spinning tools as well. And I was lucky enough to travel to New Zealand last year, and one of my friends over in New Zealand gifted me several bags of Ashford fibre, and this is their merino and silk sliver or sliver fibre, which is 80% New Zealand merino and 20% silk. I'm at the moment working my way through the poppy seed colour, and this is what the fibre looks like in its unspun form, and I've spun through the first half, so what's left here is approximately 50 grams. I think it's slightly over 53 grams or something like that. And this is what I have managed to spin up so far. I often show my bobbins in progress here when I'm chatting about my weekly progress on my project, but as I've got 50% of the way through, I thought I'd show them to you. I'm actually finding this spin a real challenge. This fibre has got quite a short staple length, and as I said, my wheel can be quite limited, and I'm finding it quite difficult to manage to get enough twist into the yarn so that it actually stays together and doesn't just pull apart. if I show you the end of the bobbin here, so I did actually sort of spin this fibre, but as soon as I take it off of the bobbin, it starts kind of untwisting, and I can really easily pull that apart. And that's really been my challenge all the way through spinning this fibre, is just getting enough twist into it to hold it together. I'm very limited on my wheel in terms of ratios and adjustments. I only have one whirl, so it's really difficult for me to do anything to affect my yarns other than change my treadling speed, really. And if you're not familiar with spinning, then by treadling speed I just mean the number of times I push down on the pedal and get my flyer turning to put twist into the yarn. I'm trying to spin this fibre fairly fine. I'm going to go for a 2-ply. Originally I was going to go 3-ply, but then, and I don't know exactly how many meters I've got here. As you can see, this bobbin isn't full, and this is one of the other challenges that I've been having with this spin, is that once the bobbin gets partially full, the weight of the fibre on there is really affecting the speed of the flyer. So I'm having to put even more treadles in to get the twist in as the bobbin fills up. So I've got not really a full bobbin, but then I had to switch onto another bobbin just to be able to get the amount of twist that I need to keep this fibre together. I'm hoping I've got a fair amount of meterage in this. As I say, I'm trying to spin it fairly fine. I would dearly love to knit the new pattern by Joji Locatelli, which is, I think it's called the Storm Shawl, which is a 1 skein shawl, but I'm really not confident that I've got enough meterage on here to do that. I'm going to be working on the other half of that fibre this week, and we'll see how we go. On my spindle this week, I've just got some sort of plain green fibre. I believe this is merino. It was from a sample bag that I purchased from the UK company Woolly Knit, and I picked up a couple of bags from them at Wonderwool, and they were basically just samples and mill ends. So this fibre is not the most consistent to spin with, but I've spun through all of the singles in this green colour that I've had, so I need to wind this off and then ply it. So that'll be my little goal for this coming week. Last week I showed lots of singles that I'd spun up on my spindle from the same batch of fibre, and I got those plied this week. So these are my finished drop spindle spun yarns for this week. So I've got a little quantity of this minty green colour, and then I've also got this kind of like, I don't know, sea foamy green, mid green. I'm not really sure how you would sort of describe that. It's showing fairly true to colour from what I can see on my phone screen at the moment. So yeah, I got those two finished for my spinning endeavours this week. Next, I'm going to move on to crochet. I've got a brand new crochet project to show you this week. I am embarking on a test crochet, which is something I have not done before. I've done plenty of test knitting, but never any test crochet. But I was trawling through Instagram, as you do, and I came across a post from the lovely Sarah, who is Older Sign, both on Instagram, and I think that's her design name on Ravelry as well. And she put up a call for some testers for a new shawl pattern that she is hoping to publish soon. And I just really loved the shawl. It's a kite shaped shawl, which means it starts at the narrowest point and then kind of expands up to the widest point. And I've not done a kite shaped shawl before, so that was one thing that attracted me to it. And also the fact that it's a fairly simple repetitive design, just increasing as you go. So I saw her sample and fell in love with it and decided I could volunteer to test crochet for her. So I grabbed a couple of skeins of yarn from the Queensland collection, and this is their Perth range. And it's a US company, but the yarn originates from Australia. And it's 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. So this would make a great sock yarn, but I am using the Great Sandy colourway. And I've made a fair amount of progress on my test crochet so far. I think altogether there's something like 12 pattern repeats, and I've done 7 now. You can see what I mean by the kite shape. I started here in the narrowest point, and I have gone up, 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 up and through, and I'm now at this sort of point. So my rows are getting much longer now, and I'll continue up in this shape as we go. So as you can see, it's a nice simple repetitive pattern, just some solid rows and then a few rows of patterning, sort of lace patterning thrown in between. And I love how this colourway is working up in this shawl. Me here for a while, you know that I love crochet, but crochet doesn't always love me. So it was a bit of a risk taking on a test crochet because sometimes my wrist plays up when I crochet, but I'm loving this design so much, and it seems to be crocheting itself, and I'm, touch wood, haven't had any issues with my wrist so far. I'm doing, now I've got to these much wider rows, I'm trying to do a section a day, and that should get me a finished object well before the testing deadline, but to start with I was doing a couple of sections each day, and then so I'm taking it fairly easy to give my wrist a rest in between. The name of the shawl is Efferhild. I have no idea if I am pronouncing that right. It's an old English name. I can put a link to my test crochet page, and I'll have the name of the shawl written down below. So yeah, that's it for my Efferhild shawl, and I am probably not going to show you this again until the pattern is released. Sarah has given permission for the testers to share their progress on social media, but she's asked that we don't share the finished object until the pattern is ready for release. The pattern deadline is the 4th of September, so only a week or so left to go, so I'm fairly sure that the pattern probably will be released not long after that, so there won't be too long to wait if you are interested in crocheting your own. For anyone who is interested, I'm crocheting that on a 3mm hook. So far I have used almost 100 grams of yarn. I have got this left of my first ball, and the pattern does recommend that you have 2 100-gram balls. I think the original sample was crocheted in a Zauber ball. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of the second ball will get used, but I guess I shall find out in the not too distant future. Finally, on to knitting. Oh, I tell you, my knitting mojo and just my creative mojo all round has been fairly low this week. I know I've made quite a lot of progress on the crochet shawl, but that's really the only thing that's seen a lot of progress. I found it very difficult to get back into the swing of things after I came back from my break, and I still haven't caught up with a lot of my admin. So if you're still waiting for a reply from me, either on my last YouTube video or over on Ravelry, please be patient. I do see your messages and I will get back to you. I've just, yeah, found it difficult to get back into the swing of things, and that includes knitting. I think for several evenings last week I didn't knit at all, which is completely unusual for me. I'm always knitting and crocheting and spinning. If I've got a spare 5 minutes, I'll be knitting. But yeah, I just wasn't feeling it last week. I guess maybe a little touch of the post-holiday blues. So thankfully, my knitting mojo returned towards the end of last week, and I did make a little progress on a couple of projects that I've been working on, but I don't have any finished objects to show you. I didn't even finish the hat, the hand-spun hat that I showed last week, which really all it needs is the ends weaving in, blocking, and the little sort of finishing button detail added to it. I have actually put it in the sink to soak as we speak. So it is going to be blocking over the next couple of days, and hopefully I'll have that to show you next week. But I think that just goes to show how my mojo has been missing in action, because that really is quite a simple little job that should have been done. I just really didn't feel like doing it. Oh well. We all have these periods, don't we? And actually that could be quite a good question if you fancy chatting with me this week and popping a comment below. I'm sure we all have these ebbs and flows in our creative work and life. When you hit a sort of low point, is there anything that you turn to try and get your creative juices flowing again, or your knitting mojo back? I'd love to know if you've got particular projects that you pick up when your knitting needs a little bit of a boost, or your crochet or spinning, whichever is your preferred craft. So I actually rediscovered a little bit of sock mojo. I think socks I sort of tend to turn to when I want to do a little bit of knitting without having to think too much. So I've actually been working on 2 pairs of socks on and off this week. The first one is the crazy Zalba ball socks that I showed last week, and these were the socks that came away with me when we were on our little trip to Yorkshire. And I think last time I showed you, I was on the brink of finishing the first sock. I think I had the toe and the heel to add in. So first sock is now finished. I'm pretty sure I was down here somewhere when I showed this off last week. So I've popped in the toe and also went back and put in an afterthought heel. I didn't put the heel in as I went, only because I didn't want to sort of interrupt this kind of like faded colour sequence. Sometimes it can be a little bit jarring if you, pop in a heel flap and gusset, which changes your stitch count and things, and sometimes you kind of come back to the front of the foot and the colour has sort of changed. And I think as this is sort of like a soft kind of mild fading kind of colour effect, then I didn't want to have like a really sort of stark line across the front of the foot there where the heels popped in. So that's it for the first sock, and I started the second sock, and I am probably about halfway down the foot now, I think. Yes, I am, because I moved my progress keeper up. So as you can see, I am not worrying about matching these up at all. I haven't even figured out where the colour repeat comes in this Zalba ball, or whether it's even got one, because even if I move these sort of up and down the colours, or maybe here, I guess it depends what colour I come to next, but I can't see any of this sort of greeny colour coming up in my ball, so we shall see. So yeah, I haven't bothered trying to match these at all. They're going to be sort of mismatched socks. But I'm halfway through the foot now because I moved up my progress keeper, so I can count my rows from this point. And this lovely rainbow progress keeper I actually purchased from Caroline, who I mentioned earlier, Colourful Creativity. And I thought they went perfectly with the fun rainbow colours in this Zalba ball. I've popped in some waste yarn for going back to do my heel, so I just needed to carry on and knit these. So with any luck, these might be a finished object next week. The Zalba ball that I'm using, I picked up ages ago. It's one of the oldest sock yarns in my stash, and I actually purchased it from Wool in Bath. There are 2 lovely yarn shops in the city of Bath. If you're ever visiting that area, I can highly recommend both Wool and A Yarn Story. So yeah, I picked this up in Wool, and the colourway is 1702, but as I say, it's quite a few years old, so I've got no idea whether this colourway is actually still in production or not. But there's quite a few lovely colours in the Zalba ball range, so even if this particular colour isn't still in production, I'm sure there'll be something rainbow bright and fun that is very similar. I've got mixed feelings about working with this Zalba ball. I love the look of the finished sock. I decided in my impatience to cast on, I made the decision not to rewind my ball of yarn, which is what I usually do when I am knitting from any commercial yarns. I tend to rewind my yarns into cake form. So they're easier to manage, and it also means that I can deal with any factory knots that you sometimes come across. I find it very frustrating when I'm knitting across a row, particularly if I'm knitting a garment or a shawl and the join of the yarn comes in the middle of the row. I just don't like that at all. That's my knitting OCD kicking in. I'm not terribly fussy about a lot of things, but I do hate not being able to control where my joins come. So I tend to rewind the balls just so I can deal with any of that stuff. And I didn't on this occasion. I just started as it was sort of like in a little donut ball. I just figured, oh, that's fine, I'll just knit straight from. No need to rewind when it's already in a nice sort of like little manageable ball shape. Oh, but this has been such a pain, and I've ended up having to cut my yarn several times because where it's kind of like rewound in almost this sort of gobstopper fashion, where you can see all the colours are sort of wound together, chunks of yarn like that just keep falling off the ball. Because this has been on my on the go knitting, it's been living in my zombie head project bag, but it's gone with me to obviously on holiday. It came with me to a friend's barbecue the other day. It's been on the train, at the cinema, and as I'm pulling the yarn from the ball, it's usually sat in my bag, these big chunks of yarn keep falling off and then knotting up on themselves. So yeah, it's been a bit frustrating to work with. But I'm on the downhill stretch with that sock now, so won't be too long until that one's finished. And as usual, I'm knitting it on 2.25mm needles, and for me, I use a 64 stitch count on that needle size. The second work in progress that I have to show you is also another pair of socks, which haven't, no, I haven't shown these on their videos before. I started these in the shop just before I left for my vacation. There were a couple of days in the shop where I needed something to work on, and I've got a few sort of commission projects to work on at the moment, but none of them were really sparking any joy. So I decided to grab a ball of sock yarn from the shelf and cast on. And I cast on with some opal yarn. This is a new colourway that's recently come into the shop. It's from I think this is their Rainforest collection, which they do on a regular basis. It's Regenwald, and I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure that does translate as rainforest, but they're ranges of yarns that they do inspired by the natural world. And this one is colourway 9770. It does have a colourway name on there, but it's in German. I'm going to completely butcher it. Rummel in the Jungle? I wonder if that means rumble in the jungle. Rummel in the Jungle. My camera's probably not going to focus on that at all. Perhaps I'll pop it on the screen. Maybe there's a German speaker out there who can put me out of my misery. Anyway, on this ball band, there's a picture of a really wonderful, colourful parrot there, which has obviously inspired the colourway. And I have finished sock number 1. Here it is. I decided to put in some contrast heels, toes and cuffs. And the heels, toes and cuffs are a ball of my first Regia. I don't have that ball with me, so I'm not sure of the colourway, but it's just in a really sort of bright yellow colourway. So there is sock number 1. And I am also part way down the foot on sock number 2. So heel has gone in. I'm just using the Fish Lips Kiss heel for this one. As I'm using a contrast, I didn't have to put in waste yarn and come back. I could just knit the contrast straight in and then carry on. And I really love this colourway. A few colours of new opal came in at the same time, and there was a really fun rainbow colour, which was the one that I thought I was going to knit. But then when I was sort of stood in front of the shelf where I keep all of my opal yarns, this one just kept talking to me. So I decided to grab this one and knit it up. And I certainly wouldn't have thought to put this sort of corally colour with the yellow and green, but I think it's a really fun sort of colour combination in there. Probably show you better on that finished sock. So yeah, I've really enjoyed knitting these, and as I say, a bit of an unexpected sort of cast on, but I've really enjoyed knitting these, as you can probably tell by the amount of progress that I've made. And they're a really fun one just to have hanging around the shop for the times when I've got groups in the shop that I'm facilitating, and the commission projects that I usually work on aren't speaking to me. So yeah, I've been enjoying those too. I'm actually knitting those on 2.25mm needles again, but those are my Licker or Likey needles, and I've actually got a slightly longer cable on these than I would usually work with. I usually go for 80cm, but I only had 2.25s in 100cm. So the cable's a little bit long to wrangle, but I really wanted to try out these needles in these sort of small sock sizes. The interchangeables don't go down to the sort of small sock sizes, but I wanted to test these out Wooden needles in obviously these sort of fine millimetre gauges aren't always the sturdiest, so I often go for metal needles when knitting my socks, just because they're a bit more sort of robust. But I've had no problems with these. They do have a slight bend, and I'm sure you know, if you sat on one or trod on one, it would, you know, it's not going to withstand that sort of, but they're not like super bendy or anything. So and they're so smooth. I do love these liquor needles. So yeah, that's the only sort of something slightly different in terms of needle size and needles for my socks. And the final project that I've been working on this week is it's now actually my oldest knitting whip, and it's from a pattern from this book, Knitting Outside the Box by Bristol Ivy. I started this last year sometime, and it's actually the Canady shawl that I'm making, which is a really sort of big blankety shawl. I'll try and show you a picture without giving away the pattern. Let me see if I can show you that one there. So it's just a really big sort of shawl, and it's knit in sections. So I decided to use up some balls of Rowan felted tweed that I had. And I'm knitting all of the sections in different colours, which works really well for the construction method for this pattern. It's going to be a real pain in the what's-it to try and show you this, because I'm on the final section, and I'm joining up sort of the two sides at the moment. So I'm knitting across the middle. So I'm going to do my best. So the section that I've been working on is this orange section. And if you see what I mean, I've picked up stitches all along this green section and all along this beigey section, and I'm kind of zipping those sections up and joining them together in the middle. So I can't sort of hold this out and show you it in its entirety, because I haven't got to the top of the rows yet, and it's going to be a while before I do that. Yeah, recently I've also knit this green section, so you might not have seen that before. It's been a long time since this project has been on the videos. So yeah, as you can see, I've got the green, I've got the yellow, trying to not to lose my stitches. I've got the beigey, purple and the brown, and I'm just kind of zipping up these sections with the orange at the moment. So it's a real mishmash of sort of lovely, for the most part, autumnal colours, which if you know me, you know are my favourite. But yeah, it's been nice to get this back out and start working on it again. As I say, this is my oldest work in progress. I think this, and there's maybe 2 more knitting projects to go, and then I'll actually be on to the things that I cast on sort of around Christmas, New Year, as my oldest project. So that's not too bad. I mean, I've got tons of projects on the needles, but hopefully by the end of this year, I will only have things on the needles from 2019. We shall see. That's a goal to work towards, isn't it? Right, that's it, because I have no other finished objects for knitting or anything. It's quite unusual. I've usually got something, even if it's a small thing. But yeah, everything that I have to show you, I have now shown. So I hope you have found something of interest in this video. It's always really lovely for me to sit down and chat to you. Of course, as always, if you would like to join in the conversation, then please do either leave me a comment down below, or maybe hop on over and see if I've started my Ravelry group yet. Put my teeth in. It's definitely on. If I can get it done today, I will. But for now, I need to get up and move around a bit, because I can feel my back stiffening up. So thank you so very much for joining me. I do hope that you get to do some of the things that you enjoy this week. And until next time, great big woolly hugs to you all. Hopefully I'll be back on schedule again next Monday. But until then, bye for now.